From Prevention to Recovery with Marcel Gemme.
Welcome to From Prevention to Recovery. I'm your host, Marcel Gemme. Today, I'm honored to speak with Lieutenant Mike Hotz of the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department. Mike has served Nashville for 15 years, but his greatest achievement came when he built the Overdose Response Unit from the ground up, leading it for over 5 years while investigating overdose fatalities and developing innovative harm reduction strategies, including Nashville's One Bucks program. Before joining the MNPD, Mike served as an Army infantry sergeant, deploying to both Afghanistan and Iraq, where he received the Purple Heart. He's a certified expert witness and a passionate advocate for harm reduction and universal naloxone distribution. Lieutenant Hotz, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Marcel. I appreciate it.
So, you've had a remarkable journey from Army Infantry Sergeant to building Nashville Overdose Response Unit. How did your military experience shape your approach to tackling the overdose crisis?
Well, it was kind of an inadvertent introduction into the global drug trade. I was in Afghanistan, was my first deployment in 2004 to 2005. And, I was just a young kid, didn't really understand what I was seeing at the time, but really I was seeing the ground floor of the illicit opioid trade in action. It would be a very common occurrence for us to encounter a farmer driving from point A to point B, and we would stop them at a checkpoint, and they would have a basketball-sized clear plastic tarp filled with black tar heroin. And we would get to talking to them, and we'd find out that they would be paid the equivalent of about $40 for
Wow.
that basketball-sized chunk of black tar heroin, where if you do the math on that, that translates to anywhere from 15 to $20 million in street prices. Uh, so really, that's where I kind of started to understand the international drug trade and what it's all about. And the drug trafficking organizations are only all about making money off of the backs of citizens who are suffering from addiction. And I believe that to be true.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you mentioned that developing the overdose response unit was the greatest challenge and honor of your career. What was Nashville facing in terms of overdose fatalities when you started, and what was your vision back then for the unit?
A lot of people across the world, but specifically a lot of people in Nashville, don't even realize that the Tennessean did a study of major metropolitan areas in the United States with a population of over 500,000, and the study was concerning overdose fatalities. And Nashville, believe it or not, had the second highest rate of overdose death in the
Wow.
entire United States, only behind Baltimore. Baltimore, Maryland was number one. And that's
Wow.
not a distinction that either city is proud of. Um, and, starting up and founding the overdose unit was not something that I ever asked for or even wanted to be very truthful.
I understand.
I was in a job. I was the sergeant at the Major Case Task Force, the wiretap unit. Um, that was one of the greatest honors of my professional career to be selected for that, and I didn't want to leave that and do something else. But later came to realize what a rewarding challenge it was. Um, and it's not one that's entirely full of successes either.
Yeah.
I did the best I could from day one. I identified some needs that we had, one of which was, you know, police and law enforcement cannot solve the overdose crisis by
Mm.
ourselves. And I learned very quickly that it's not just a public safety issue, it's also a public health issue. And both of those two entities have to work together: police, fire, medical, health department, the hospital system. And one of the first things we really wanted to do is hire somebody who was not a police officer, who was an expert. And that's where Barbara Brown and I crossed paths. She's a retired critical care nurse. Um, Although the hiring process, because I do work in a government unit, it took a long time to get her hired, but she hit the ground running. And you know, we we did as building the overdose unit, we did a lot of things right, and we did some things wrong too, and we learned from it. Um, but it was very obvious to me from the very first day of the job that harm reduction measures were going to be of absolute critical importance to the success of the team.
Now, what were the biggest obstacles that you see, and how did you overcome them?
Well, all across the United States, police departments have a difficulty hiring candidates, qualified candidates, and have a problem with retention. Now that is getting a lot better. We have an exceptional background and recruitment team that's really doing a great job. Um, but personnel shortages. Patrol is the backbone of any good police department, and the police department has to prioritize staffing patrol first
Yeah.
before specialty units like the overdose unit. Um, there was a period in time when I only had one detective, but we all chip in and we all do the best that we can, um, and just you know keep ourselves motivated by remembering that we're just trying to keep people from dying, to live another day, so that one day they could seek treatment.
Now, can you walk through what a typical day look like as an overdose prevention specialist?
Um, I don't think there's any typical day, to be honest.
I'm sure.
Um,
I'm sure.
every day comes with a new set of interesting and unique challenges, but um, one of the things I do every day when I come in is to monitor the overdose statistics for the
Mhm.
previous day. Um, there is a almost real time program produced by a subset of the DEA called HIDTA, HIDTA, which stands for High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. They have a program called ODMAP, and Nashville is a participant in ODMAP, where when the fire in Nashville, the fire department is responsible for all the ambulance calls in the city. So if somebody's having an overdose, the police and the fire department paramedics are dispatched. And then when they get out to the scene, if it is an overdose, they input that into their iPad type devices, and once they connect to the Wi-Fi that's on each individual ambulance, that data is uploaded. So I get almost real-time anonymized data about, to protect HIPAA, of course, to identify how many fatal and non-fatal overdoses happen. So that way I can log into ODMAP and see if there's been an increase in fatal or non-fatal overdoses in any geographic area. And that happens more than I care to admit. But when we do identify these geographic hotspots, myself and Barbara Brown and all of our other partners in overdose prevention, which we have a lot, we can speak about that later. It's a real
Mhm.
critical part of our approach. But we can respond to those geographic areas on foot and do what I refer to as the boots on the ground work of just meeting people where they're at and giving them resources for treatment, give them harm reduction resources like naloxone, and test strips for both fentanyl as well as the novel substances that are in our substance mixed in with our fentanyl supply now, like xylazine and medetomidine.
Oh, now, how has the overdose situation in Nashville changed over the years? Since the unit started.
So I make an offhanded joke that the first 3 years that I was at the overdose unit, I was, the sergeant. I was responsible for it, building it up. Um, it was my baby. And the first 3 years that I was there, we had significant statistical increases in overdose fatalities. So always joke that, I would expect a pink slip on my door any day I showed up to work, that I was fired or moved somewhere else. But, lucky for me, they stuck with me. Um, and finally in 2024, so we saw a tiny decrease in 2023. We saw it was less than a 1% reduction. We went from 756 to 754 fatalities, which is a staggering amount of people dying, especially in sleepy little Music City, USA. Um, but then in 2024, we saw a 34% drop in overdose deaths.
Wow.
That is significant, um, but it's still way too many people dying. It's I would say there's no normal amount of people dying from opioids, but it's nowhere near the level that it was before fentanyl showed up on scene.
Yeah.
Um, and then in 2025, the final numbers haven't been published yet because we're waiting on some of the results from the medical examiner's office. Um, but we expect another 15 to 20% reduction, which is great. Um, but our work's not done. We still have a lot of work to do. You know, I think a lot of those lives saved are because of the amount of naloxone that Barbara and I distribute throughout the city,
Mhm.
as well as our other partners. We've developed a really robust system of getting Narcan on the street and getting overdose reversal kits on the street, um, just to flood the market with
Yeah.
universal naloxone distribution. And we had a lot of challenges there too. Um, our normal supply that we historically had gotten naloxone from uh, was drastically reduced.
Okay.
Um,
Was it a question of budget or?
um, that is a very complicated and
That's fine.
expensive question that I'm going to have to leave to somebody else. But
That's totally okay.
it was reduced drastically. Like
Okay.
we're talking, the one year we were supplied 7,000 boxes, which is 14,000 doses. And then we were told the next year that was going to be reduced to 200 quarterly. So
Wow.
800 for annually. So Barbara and I put our heads together. We were not going to let that reduction stop our mission because it's clearly having success across the city.
Yeah.
People are alive. Um, so we went and sought donations from all over the country. There is a there's a lot of the private pharmaceutical corporations that make naloxone that we were very blessed to have very generous donations from them and other overdose and recovery organizations from all across the United States. One of them, they shipped me 2 full pallets of naloxone when I
Wow.
really desperately needed it. Um, so I won't say their name on here because I don't want everybody begging them
That's
for
okay.
donations, but
No, I
you
understand.
hear me, you know who you are, and you know what a difference you made. Um, but, we also acknowledge that, you know, naloxone it doesn't cure addiction, but it is crucial. It saves lives. It's a life jacket when somebody is drowning. Um, so we did see that 34% reduction in death that I was telling you about, but one thing that troubles me is that we did not see a correlated 34% increase in people seeking treatment.
Okay.
And that's something that we as a nation, the United States, but as a world community as well, we need to drastically increase people's access to addiction recovery resources, treatment facilities, and access to medication assisted treatment or MAT.
Now, what drug do you see laced with fentanyl that, people overdose on? Because, sometimes it's not just they're going to take fentanyl alone and
Yeah. So, heroin has all but disappeared. Um, in calendar year 2024, there was only one overdose fatality related to heroin. Fentanyl is by far the leading cause of overdose death in the city. Um, One thing I did not realize when I was building up the overdose unit, I was naive to was how many people actually die from polysubstance overdoses, which is
Yeah.
fentanyl mixed with something else, or overdoses that are related to methamphetamine and cocaine, uh, which is significant. But in the beginning of the overdose unit, the drug trafficking organizations were mixing fentanyl in with heroin
Yeah.
to kind of transition, the users to be able to dose themselves appropriately. Um, Obviously, that was ineffective and deadly. Um, but then heroin all but disappeared. And people who are using right now, they know that what they're ingesting is fentanyl, with the exception of we see fentanyl being mixed in with a lot of the illicit uh, stimulant drugs. We see fentanyl mixed in with approximately 50% of the cocaine supply and about
Wow.
70% of the methamphetamine supply. Um, and then, so somebody who thinks they're buying a stimulant is getting a stimulant mixed with a powerful depressant.
Wow.
And that's troublesome. Um, we have recently seen upticks of people who think they're buying crack cocaine, and it is crack cocaine laced with fentanyl. And then one of the other more ubiquitous problems that we have is the counterfeit prescription pill problem that we have, where there are the drug trafficking organizations are pressing pills that are meant to look like either opioids or benzodiazepines like Xanax. Um, and really it's just mixed with fentanyl. And these drug trafficking organizations, or DTOs as we refer to them, they don't have any quality control in place in their manufacturing process.
Yeah, for sure.
There's nothing to say that there is the right amount of fentanyl in each individual pill. And a fatal dose of fentanyl is 2 milligrams and up. And that is a very minuscule amount. Um, and we were the border patrol obviously seizes a significant amount of counterfeit fentanyl pills at the southern border particularly, and they did a laboratory analysis, a random sampling, and they found that 42% of the counterfeit pills coming across the border have more than 2 milligrams of fentanyl in it.
Wow.
So if you drill down on that, 42% of the pills coming across the border, if somebody who does not have a built up tolerance to opioids takes that, they have a 42% chance of being dead. And then you couple that and drill down even further. The DOJ did a study of teenagers and their attitudes about using prescription pills recreationally. And 2 out of 5 teenagers believe that it's safe to
Wow.
recreationally use prescription pills. So it was kind of a perfect storm, but we are trending in the right direction. There are signs for hope, but there's a lot that we need to continue doing, and there's a lot that we as a society need to be getting better at.
Now, the One Bucks program is totally innovative. Like, you have over 350 units installed throughout Nashville, which is amazing. Now, can you walk us through how this idea came about and what it took to bring it to life?
Yeah. The One Box program, if anybody is not familiar with them, you need to get familiar with them. It is a overdose reversal kit that, here, do you mind if I grab one and show it to
Yeah,
you?
sure, sure. That would be amazing.
I have this one hanging on my office door.
Oh, okay.
Grab it. This is a one box overdose reversal kit. It was invented by a fine gentleman named Joe Murphy. He's become a good friend of mine since then.
Okay.
And his lovely wife, Dr. Susan Murphy, is the CEO of the West Virginia Drug Intervention Institute. And they produce these boxes at a very, very uh, uh, cost effective rate. They're not expensive. And they have rescue breathing masks. And I recently went through EMT school, and I learned how critical rescue breathing is when somebody is having an acute opioid overdose. It has 2 doses of naloxone product. This in particular is Cloxado, which is 2 8-milligram doses. Um, but the cool thing about them is that they have a drop-down screen, and it plays a video,
Wow.
Off, let's take a deep breath.
and the video
Wow.
it serves a lot of functions. If somebody falls out with an opioid overdose in front of you, that lovely lady on the video is Jan Rader. She is a retired fire department chief who is on the front lines of the overdose crisis in West Virginia. There's actually a Netflix special documentary that they did on her called Heroin with an E at the end, uh, and she was nominated for an Emmy for it actually. Um,
Wow.
but
Now,
the
is that video available online or?
Yes, if you search it, their videos are available online. And the other aspect to that video is you can press a button called training mode, and if let's say a small business or something has one installed, if they onboard a new employee, they can press the training mode button, and within 5.5 minutes, that person will be trained up on overdose identification and overdose reversal, and it also has a Spanish language button on it. Um, and like I said, it's very cost effective. The CEO and the inventor are both just spectacular human beings, and I hitched my wagon to their cart when I realized what genuine human beings they were that are just interested in saving lives and ending overdose.
Wow.
But you were talking, it's another funny story, and it's pretty embarrassing about how the one box program got off the ground.
Okay.
Um, I was introduced to the charitable arm of Gibson Guitars. It's called Gibson Gives, and they were partnering with One Box way in the early days to get, as you know, musicians have been disproportionately affected by the overdose crisis.
Yeah.
Um, so Gibson was trying to get one boxes installed in all the music venues, and we have lots of them here in Nashville, Music City, USA. Um, but they were hitting a lot of pushback. Um, the owners and managers were worried about liability, of which there is none,
Of course.
and that's something that I preach. So they asked me for my help, and I was like, I will absolutely help you out. And in the first 14 months of the program, was able to install precisely 0 one boxes. I
Okay.
went I tried to figure it out, and I don't know. It was they continuously worried about the liability, and I would talk till I'm blue in the face that there is no liability to carrying naloxone. The only thing it does is reverse opioid overdoses. There was still that hesitation, and let's call it what it is, stigma around addiction.
Yeah.
Um, but we really started to get some success after a fortuitous set of meetings. And it really proved to me having the right people in the right room at the right time can be critical.
Yeah.
And that's what happened here. I partner with the University of Tennessee Smart Policy Initiative. They're part of the University of Tennessee's Institute for Public Safety. And one of their employees, a fine gentleman named Trevor Henderson, he and I had worked together for years. What Smart Policy does is they advise cities on the appropriate and effective use of the opioid settlement funds.
Yeah.
So he and I had been colleagues for a long time. Um, and he said, Mike, I met with somebody. His name is Benton McDonough, and he is with the mayor's office of nightlife, which is was a newly established office to be a liaison between the bars and the nightclubs and the music venues and the mayor's office. And Benton is also the director of the beer board. Um, and Trevor suggested that Benton, and I meet up together and see if we could put our heads together. And we met, and Benton and Trevor and I really struck it off. We all share the same common goals, and Benton said, "Yeah, I can help you get one boxes installed in the venues." And to be honest, I was shook his hand and said thank you, and then nah, I don't think he's going to be able to do it. And then within 1 hour of him leaving my office, there were a dozen email requests in my inbox
Wow.
requesting one boxes. And then the program just kind of took off. We currently have 363 installed in the city of Nashville. We have them installed in every Metro Nashville public school. We have them
Wow.
installed in every major sports venue, Bridgestone Arena, Nissan Stadium, First Horizon Park, where the Nashville Sounds play, and then Geodis Park, where the Nashville Soccer Club plays. The word is getting out there, and
Wow.
people really started getting on board and realizing that there was this stigma about addiction and that all we're trying to do is save lives.
Now, since the program launched, what kind of impact have you seen with it?
So I am proud to say we have 14 confirmed lives saved through the One Box program.
Wow.
Um, we anonymize the locations. No business wants to get a known as like an overdose location. So
Yeah.
we don't say where those places are, but
Mhm.
14 people are alive today because of the One Box program. And it is something that just works and it works well. It's efficient. And if anybody here is listening from the city of Nashville, um, please feel free to email me and I'll come install a One Box. As long as you're in the city limits, I will be there.
That's very good. Now, can you explain to friends or family about the Good Samaritan law? You know, where sometimes people are afraid to call because they don't want to get legal concern or, when someone is in danger.
Yeah, Tennessee has a Good Samaritan law. Most of the 50 states have a Good
Mhm.
Samaritan law. I would assume it's probably similar in Canada.
Yeah.
Um, but the Good Samaritan law, as long as the person is acting in good faith and they're trying to help this individual, they cannot be held criminally or civilly liable for anything that happens, as long as they're acting in good faith, as long as they don't take some sort of crazy action that is not meant to help the individual. Um, if you administer naloxone, you are covered. And one thing a lot of people don't realize is that the only thing naloxone does is reverse opioid overdoses. It detaches the opioid molecule from the opioid receptor in the brain, and it lets that person start breathing or continue breathing, and it lets their heart pump oxygenated blood through their system. I could sit here during this interview and do a dose of naloxone intranasally every 5 minutes while I'm talking to you, and the worst thing that would happen to me is I would get a mild headache.
Okay.
Um, when in doubt, use it.
Okay. Makes sense.
Many paramedics across the country, if they come across a person on the ground, what they commonly call a man down call, and they don't know the circumstances, a lot of times they'll start their treatment just by administering naloxone because there's no negative to it.
Yeah. And even like sometimes people is gonna be afraid to call 911, because they're on like high on drugs themselves. So
And that's another, I believe, innovative approach that we took here in Nashville with the Metro Nashville Police Department. Um, we fully realize that we can't arrest ourselves out of the addiction problem.
yeah.
And we saw a move away from small misdemeanor drug arrests or drug paraphernalia arrests. We would very much rather put treatment resources in somebody's hand, so they would have the phone number for a treatment resource if they were ready to receive it. Um, and then I partner with a lot of different addiction recovery services, both MAT as well as intensive inpatient treatment facilities. And between Barbara and I, if we come across somebody who says, "I'm ready to receive treatment right now," I think we would have about a 95% success rate in getting that person into treatment
Good.
right there on the spot.
Now, what's your message to communities that are hesitant about making naloxone widely available? And, what misconception do you see the most?
You know, one of the biggest misconceptions to me is that addiction is a product of bad choice or a
Mm,
product of a moral failing. Um, I've mentioned stigma a few times, but really, people looking down on people suffering from addiction.
yeah.
And I would argue that addiction is not a result of bad choices. Yes, there is an element of bad choice the first
Yeah.
time that person
Yeah.
chooses to use. Yes, there's no denying that. But after that, opioids specifically rewire the brain to feel like the individual is physically going to die i- if
Mm,
they don't have that drug in their system. And it takes medical professional support to get somebody on the other side of addiction. Um, so, what I would tell people, just citizens as a whole, I would ask them to think about what if it was you or one of your family members, your brother, God forbid, your child, who mm, became addicted to a substance and needed help. Would you want naloxone around that individual, or would you not want naloxone
yeah.
around that individual? And if you answer, yes, I would want naloxone around that individual, uh, it would be hypocritical for someone to say, no, I'm not going to carry naloxone.
True.
All it does is save lives. And one thing I've learned, and this sounds morbid, and it is, but you can't get into treatment. You can't get into sobriety if you're dead.
Nope.
And that's
That's
all
for
we're
sure.
trying to do is save people's lives.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Now, looking ahead, what do you see as the next critical steps in addressing the overdose crisis, both in Nashville and across the country?
I would argue that increased access to treatment facilities would be a step number one. And if there are any lawmakers who are listening to this podcast, please remove the restrictions that are placed on the prescription of medication assisted treatment like Suboxone. It is cumbersome and difficult for doctors to prescribe naloxone
Mm,
when there is statistical proof that it's saving lives. If somebody who is addicted to opioids gets that first dose of Suboxone um, in their system, they have a 75% chance of being alive at the 1 year mark. Increase.
mm.
75% increase. We need to increase access to MAT as well as intensive inpatient treatment facilities. Um, and I would argue that naloxone is still not as widespread as we want it to be. I think it is here in Nashville, but I think across the rest of the world it is not. So increased universal naloxone access.
Now, to end, you kind of answered that question, but what advice would you give to a family or anyone related to someone who is using drugs that can create an overdose?
So I've seen it more times than I care to admit where a family is devastated. Um, if there is a family member who is addicted, whether it's opioids or otherwise, it can drag the rest of that family down through the pits of hell. Um, I would encourage the families to not give up hope. I would tell them that there is little to no chance that you can force that person into treatment.
Mm,
Somebody has to want treatment and seek treatment and be ready to receive treatment for it to have a chance of success. I would also tell them the harsh truth of it that even if that person does get into treatment, addiction is a terrible disease and the chances of relapse are significant. People can relapse two, three, four,
mm,
5 times, but that shows that that individual is still trying.
yeah.
So don't get disappointed if a person relapses. Get them into treatment again, and just know that there are people around this country that are willing to support you and reach out if you need treatment. Um, it's happened more times than I can count. I get a 2 a.m. phone call. Somebody's got a family member that's ready to go into treatment, and they're worried if they don't get into treatment now that they're going to die. So Barbara and I do everything we can to get that person into treatment right there, because the next day that person's not going to be ready to receive treatment. They're going to get back into their addiction.
And also, I think to get trained on how to administer naloxone, recognizing the signs and so on.
Yes, sir.
When they know that they're using opioids and so on. So,
Could I do an informal overdose reversal training with you and your audience?
oh, absolutely,
All right, let
absolutely.
me go grab my trainer.
Okay, good.
All right. The naloxone that we distribute is a nasal spray. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
This tip right here gets inserted into the nostril. But before we go into that, how to identify somebody suffering from an opioid overdose? They're probably going to be unconscious. They may not be breathing at all, or their breathing will sound like the worst snoring that you've ever heard. It's called agonal breathing, and it sounds like a person snoring or gasping for air, and then long pauses of no lung movement at all. And then they do the snore again. Um, the lips turn blue, very noticeably blue, and the fingernails turn blue as well. If you see any of those signs or symptoms, call whatever your emergency medical phone number is. Here in the US, it's 911. Get that ambulance coming to you first. And then you're going to go get your naloxone. Hopefully, it's nearby. You need to always keep your naloxone somewhere with ready access. Um, and then these are a one-time use deal, so don't test it. It's just one and done. It's a nasal spray similar to Nasacort or any other allergy nasal medication. You insert this tip into the nose. If you remember, try and point it out towards the ear a little bit. So you insert that tip into the nose, and then you press the plunger on the bottom. And that spray, that releases the medication. Then you sit and watch that individual for 2 or 3 minutes. If they wake up or they start breathing, you're good. Just continue to monitor them and wait for that ambulance to get to you so they can administer further treatment. If they don't wake up or start breathing, you're going to go into the box of naloxone, and usually there's a second dose of naloxone in there. And you're going to administer that second dose in the other side of the nostril. And hopefully by then, the ambulance will have arrived on scene.
Oh, perfect. Now, is there a position that it's better to place the person when?
Yes. So when you're going to be administering the naloxone product, you want them laying on a firm, flat surface on their back. So with their face pointing up to the sky, or in medical terms, supine. If the person starts breathing or wakes up, you're going to put them in what's called the recovery position. Feel free to Google that, but that is essentially where a person is on their side, propped up by one of their arms and one of their knees pointed up. It keeps them from rolling all the way over. This prevents the individual from aspirating in case they vomit. You don't want them to breathe that back in. It allows all liquids to come out of the mouth.
Good. Hey, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
So, Mike, thank you for being with us. And again, very well done, because your program is saving lives every day throughout Nashville.
It sincerely does take a village. This is not my success. I share it with every single one of our problem-solving partnerships throughout the community. Everything from the University of Tennessee Smart Policy Initiative, the Mayor's Office of Nightlife, our partnerships with treatment facilities like Samaritan Recovery Community, as well as the Mental Health Co-op, and our partnership with the City Council, Council Member Aaron Evans particularly. It really is a team effort, and I'm proud of the coalition that we've built together, and we really just want to save lives. And if anybody is ever interested in creating an overdose response for your area, please feel free to contact me. You can learn from my mistakes and from my successes as well.
This is very good. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you, Marcel. Thank you very much for the invite to be here.
You're welcome.